Hello, welcome back, and as promised, much more detailed information on what the bells and whistles and the buttons do for the new 3D track solver that's inside Mocha 2024. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started right now. Okay, so here we are in Mocha. We got ourselves a nice little warehouse scene. It's pretty simple. You got some nice parallaxing going on. You got this foreground pole here, this beam, and this nice little foreground element that pops in. So this shouldn't be too much of a trouble to track, but let's see if we can break it. All right, let's start out by changing to our camera solve layout. Brings up our new control panel here. This we'll deal with once we've solved the camera. Go to our camera solve tab. And unlike the quick start guide where I had already done a planar track, we're not going to do that. You can actually just hit the solve button and see what happens. Whether it be good, bad, we don't know. Let's find out. So this was a really, really good solve. I was actually kind of surprised. But how do I know that? Well, it's this little solve data information down here. A lot of green, and this average error is at 0.5353. What does that mean? Well, anything 1 and below is great. Anything above 1 is questionable. 1 to 1.5 is workable, but honestly, if you get to 2, I would just resolve. And you do that by adjusting this stuff here to help you get a better solve. We'll go over this in a minute. So let's go ahead and look at our controls here. What do these buttons do over here? Solve, well, we know what that does. Don't need to go to that. Clear solve, that's pretty self-explanatory. Let's go ahead and hit it, and it clears out our solve. Focal length. What does that do? Well, all this stuff here is for your camera information. Majority of the time you won't be needing to deal with this, but if you should happen to know your focal length and your film back, definitely put that in to give you a more accurate solve. The next thing is your 3D motion. The motion type, all right, normal motion is what you're going to be using, I would say 90% of the time, all right, and that means it's going to be either dolly in, dolly out, crane up, crane down, push in, push out, sort of thing. So when there's a lot of parallaxing, definitely use this solve. Crash pan. Crash pan is basically a nodal pan. It's basically turning the camera left, right, up, down. You're not moving. You're just literally turning the camera left, right, and up and down. Low detail. Low detail is for things like if you're on a green screen and there's not much data there, or a low-res image, things like that. When there's not much detail to pick up, it does some math basically to help give you a camera solve. Zoom lens, again, self-explanatory. If you've got a zoom, you're zooming into your subject, not actually moving, but just zooming in, then you use that. On a tripod, again, self-explanatory. If you know you're on a tripod, definitely put that in there. Corners. Now this is an interesting one. In theory, when you click corners, it's supposed to find corners like this corner here, this corner there, and these little corners up here. It knows that those are corners, and it's supposed to help give you a better solve, knowing that those are corners. Next thing is the features. So if you do happen to solve, let's go ahead and do our solve again, and you realize you got a big error number, like 1.9 or a 2 or 3 or 10 or whatever. You realize, I need more points in here. Well, that's what this min and max tracker count is. It throws some more of these green dots in here, which are your vertexes that it's calculating its track off of. So let's go ahead and bump this up. Let's say I want a bare minimum of 34 tracks. And right now it's 120. Maximum is all they'll put in there. We're going to go ahead and put 400 in there. Now, when you bump that up, it will take longer to track, obviously. So let's go ahead and see if we can get a better track than 5.4 solve. Well, look at that. We got a 4.6 now. Much better solve. And as you can see, a lot more trackers. Let's go crazy. Let's go 1400. This is going to take a while, so I'm going to speed up the video once I hit solve. Okay, so there we got it. As you can see, we got a lot more points in here. We're at 4.38. Again, 4.3 didn't really gain much from the 400 max pixels, but it's definitely a lot denser. And this is good, especially if you want to actually put stuff in here, like geo and the like. So let's go ahead and change to our perspective view, F2 and F3, which is what I'm going to be using from now on. And Alt left click allows you to zoom around. And look at that, we're starting to get a point cloud of our warehouse. We're even picking up our little foreground element there on the side. So that's actually pretty cool. So let's go ahead and go back to our camera and knock this back down to 400, just because. All right, small blip size and big blip size. So what is a blip? Well, these numbers are based off your pixels, the quality of your pixels. For example, a high-res photo or video versus a low-res video. The lower res video that you have, the more you're going to need to up your blip. So it basically takes into account, because this is a low image picture, you need more of the sampling, if you will. So increase that. But if you got a high res image, like a 5K footage or whatever, you can actually lower this. This footage is, I believe, let me check, 1920 by 1080, and a 7 default blip is more than fine for what we need. So if I had a 640 or whatever, I'd probably want to up that a bit more. If I was a 5K or Ultra HD, I could probably lower that. Right? Your big blip is the same thing. It measures the pixel size of the bigger features. And like, for example, we'll just use this as an example. Small blip, let's say it's looking at that little dot right there, that grain of whatever that is on the wood. And then a bigger blip would look at maybe this whole corner in general. So what number do you put this at? Well, this is usually double whatever this is, as a rule of thumb. So what if you put this at, we'll put this at, I don't know, 9, and then we would put this at 18, okay? Let's see if that gives us a better solve. Back to 400, let's see what he did. See, we got a worse solve because either we didn't have enough trackers, or the blip size was way too high for this, okay? Because it didn't need to be that high. That's the thing. It doesn't need to be that high. Let's go ahead and drop this back to 7. And I think the default was 15. And do another solve. So we were at 0.6. And there we are. We're at 0.6 with a higher blip, and 0.46 with the new lower blip. So again, if you're having problems getting this, adjust these accordingly and adjust these accordingly. So that's basically how you get a better solve. Here's the thing. Suppose we're going to let's pretend this corner right there, you need one of these little dots, and you need to put it right there at that corner, and you need one at this corner, and you need this to be on the x-axis. Specifically, this is your origin, and then this is your x-axis, okay? How do we get there? Well, you come back here to your track, and this is where you need to actually put in a surface. So let's go ahead and put a track up here and track this. Turn on our surface and move this corner. Wherever these corners is at, it'll put a blip or a vertices, one of those green dots. We'll put one in the center too. So the 4 corners and the center is where it will put a dot. Why is this important? Well, you definitely need control over these specific edges and corners of your scene in order to set the layout correctly. Let's go ahead and pop that right there. I think that's as good as we're going to get. And track forward. Back to our camera solve, resolve it, and it should put a dot right there and right there in those 2 corners. And it does. All right, so nice magenta color, so we signify that it's basically a manual track, if you will, and so we know what to look for. Also, if you come over here to your features and select it. There's our surface right there. All right, to layer 1, layer 1. All right, so now that we got our little corner, now we're going to start using this control panel here for our layout. So if we go to our perspective, as you can see, 1, it is way below the grid. So here's your origin. All right, it's like almost in the middle of our warehouse. We don't want that. Our floor is way down here below the floor plane, so we want to move that up, and we want this X to go this direction to match up with these 2 points at the bottom of the pillar. So how do we set those? Let's go ahead and go back to our camera layout. This is probably the easiest layout I've ever had to deal with in any 3D package. Blender, Synthesize, Bougie, whatever. This is the easiest I've ever had to do it. So you pick your origin first, because your camera will rotate around that. Pick it, and down here you hit the word origin. Boom, look at that, look how quick that was. All right, make sure all these are on the floor plan so that it's not tilted left or right. So let's go ahead and grab a bunch of these guys, click and drag. All right, making sure that is actually part of the floor and I didn't pick something weird up, okay. And then align to ground plane. See, a little bit of a shift, interesting. Now we need to make this go on the X-axis, because right now it's kind of doing this. So come all the way up here to scene transform, and then now we can go ahead and rotate along the Y-axis here to rotate that around. And there we go. As a matter of fact, we can go to our perspective mode and look at it even better. So let's go ahead here. Let's go ahead and rotate that around a bit more. Oops, that was my fault. There we go. Put that right on the X line. So now that pillar, front of that pillar is on the X-axis. And we're no longer below the floor. Okay, suppose we're going to play Let's Pretend that this point and this point need to be exactly 12 feet from each other, so you can get a sense of scale, because that's part of layout is understanding the scale. All right, so if you click on these, come up here, there's a new little icon, which is a tape measure. All right, and for 12 feet, I believe is about 3.6 meters, I believe. And as you can see, the grid changed a bit, and now those are 12 foot apart. So that's, again, a little bit more information on set. If you have that information, by all means, plug it in, so when you put your character in there or your 3D in there, it'll be somewhat to scale to real life. So layout is now done. So there you have it. That's basically it. Okay, now all we have to do is export the camera data and basically export it like you would anything else out of Mocha. All right, there you go. If you're going to do nuke, I would recommend the USD format here, not the nuke built in, because this is going to be the new flavor going forward in the future. If you have Synthesize, which is what this whole entire tracker is based off of, if you have Synthesize and you want to refine it even more, you can actually send it out as a Synthesize file and then continue working with it in Synthesize. But there you have it, a much more detailed account of what those buttons and settings do to get a much better track for your project. If you have any questions, go ahead and email me and I'll try to help you out. And until then, I'll see you next time. You have a good day.